Do the Saints have an easy path to the NFL playoffs in 2024? I couldn't believe the headline when I saw it. I thought my eyes were deceiving me, but here we are with OTB, Bob Hebert, Jacob Hester. Ladies and gentlemen, I just left the gym. Do not let my bulbous shoulders distract you from the video. Let's get into it.
For New Orleans Saints, for the second year in a row, will have the easiest strength of schedule in the entire NFL.
When I saw this headline, I thought it should be sent to some kind of psychiatric school, a college or something to be studied. We are a mere, 2 weeks, something like that, away from the Saints' last game and the season that was 2023. And remember how we started it? Wow, the Saints have the easiest schedule in the NFL. Wow, the NFL's NFC South is not very good. Wow, the Saints could probably win 10, 11, 12 games. And here we are, a couple days after the last game, and we're already saying the exact same thing. Listen, it ain't an easy path because it can't be as easy as last year was, and last year wasn't an easy path. So right now, don't look at me like that, Jacob. Right now, what would make this path easy? I'll tell you what, if we got rid of Pete Carmichael, if we got rid of Dennis Allen. Unfortunately, it looks like we are not getting rid of Dennis Allen. Unfortunately, it looks like he is remaining. If anything, we're probably going to lose players. We're probably going to lose Michael Thomas. We may lose Marshawn Lattimore. Are we going to replace them? Who are we going to replace them with? Are we going to replace them in the draft, free agency? Who knows, right? So we have a lot of questions to answer. So just because the schedule is quote unquote easy, and we will look at the schedule in this video. I'll tell you this right now. The schedule next year, way harder than the schedule last year. I don't think the schedule next year is favorable at all.
At least when it comes to combined win-loss record, games versus teams over 500, and games versus 2023 playoff teams.
All three things, all three metrics, take them, ball them up, open your window, and throw them out the window. Because we have talked about strength of schedule a zillion times on this channel. I have laid out how you should quantify a strength of schedule. The last way you should do it is by previous season win-loss, previous season over 500, and previous season playoffs. Because teams change, coaches change, quarterbacks change, all that stuff changes. All right? A great example. Before this season, the Houston Texans would have ranked in the bottom 3 as far as impacting a strength of schedule. You would have looked at them and they would have made your schedule easier, right? Because of what they did the previous year, because of how bad they were. Well, CJ Stroud comes in. How do you quantify that? You can't until you see it. DeMeco Ryans comes in. How do you quantify that? You can't until you see it, right? Will Anderson, how do you quantify that? So now the Texans are a good team, right? You can quantify that. Same with a lot of these teams, like the Chargers. The Chargers are on their schedule. They are going to negatively impact a ESPN-style strength of schedule because they weren't 500, they weren't a playoff team, and they had a bad win-loss record. What all happened? They fired their coach. Justin Herbert got hurt in the middle of the season. A lot of those games are Easton Stick. Justin Herbert will be there. Who knows who their coach will be? Could be Jim Harbaugh, could be Bill Belichick. Who knows? But we can assume they'll be better, right? Atlanta, same thing. Atlanta this year, not a playoff team, negatively impacting the schedule. They will have a new quarterback. They will have a new coach. There's a lot of moving pieces. So teams will improve. Okay, bad teams that were bad last year will improve, and we'll see that in the schedule.
The Saints will play a schedule with a combined win percentage of .453. Not very good.
Quick, just in case you haven't seen the previous videos, how I would quantify strength of schedule is once the teams are set after the draft, all that stuff, I would blend Super Bowl or conference odds. So, their odds to win the conference or their odds to win the Super Bowl, I would blend that with their Vegas set regular season win totals. So if a team has a regular win total of 9.5 and they won 5 games last year, that's very different. Vegas is expecting them to win somewhere around 9.5 games, not 5. So if you're going by 5, you're greatly under evaluating that team. Okay, so that's how I do it. I look at it by the conference odds. Conference is better. I think a Super Bowl, a lot of variance as far as like getting to the Super Bowl, but conference is a good look at it. I do conference odds and regular season win over unders is how I would do strength of schedule.
Both them and the Falcons play schedules that are 131 and 158. And the Saints will play 8 games against teams above 500 and 8 games against playoff teams. Now, partially this is misleading because basically if you're in the NFC South, you're in this. I mean, Tampa's tied for 27th right there. Carolina's 29th, and Atlanta, New Orleans tied for easiest in the league. So a lot of that is just being in a bad division. But Jake, I don't take any. I don't take much solace in this fact for 2 reasons.
What do you mean for 2 reasons? One reason, pal, and he's going to say what I said to open the video. We just did this. We just did this whole thing where we tried to justify the Saints having a really good season and a quote unquote easy path to the playoffs because of their schedule. We just lived this nightmare. And now we're starting it all over again. Let's look at the schedule. Let's look at the schedule before we even let T-Bob do it. So this is, okay, I don't know what that is. This is the schedule. So obviously times and all that stuff, TBD, but we play Washington at home. Again, we'll have a new head coach. We'll have a new quarterback. Go to Atlanta, new head coach, new quarterback. At Carolina, new head coach. At Dallas, could be a new head coach. At Kansas City, at the Chargers, new head coach. Atlanta, Carolina, Tampa Bay, Philly, Denver, the Raiders, new head coach, and probably a new quarterback. At the Giants, at the Bucks, at Green Bay, LA at home, and Cleveland at home. This schedule's hard as hell. I mean, this schedule is tough. Like, look at this. You got Philly, who's good, obviously. You have the Packers, who just dog walked Dallas. Jordan Love, another year in the system. They're good. The Rams, they're good. We know what they could do. Cleveland, they're good, right? And this is a Cleveland team without their starting quarterback, without Nick Chubb. The Chargers will be better. Again, it's on the road. Justin Herbert, they will have a new head coach, a lot of weapons. Kansas City, obviously they are good, especially at Arrowhead. At Dallas, really tough game. Dallas is good, especially during the regular season. This schedule's hard. Like, this schedule to me is really hard. I don't see how this can be anywhere near comparable, or some people I know say comparable, to the schedule this year. Just off the top of my head, I would say we beat Washington. We split against Atlanta. We probably sweep Carolina, lose to Dallas, lose to KC, lose to the Chargers. Let's say we split against Tampa, lose to Philly, lose to Denver. I'll say we beat the Raiders just because I'm feeling nice. At New York's tough game, but let's say we beat the Giants. Lose to Green Bay. I've already split against the Bucks. Probably lose to the Rams, lose to the Browns. So I'm thinking 7 wins off the top of my head. And that's without even knowing who the quarterbacks and coaches are going to be for a lot of these teams. You know, if Atlanta gets Bill Belichick and Michael Penix, all of a sudden it's like, man, do we split against Atlanta? If, you know, a lot of these teams make huge drastic moves, then, you know, like the Giants, who's their quarterback going to be? I have no idea. Raiders, no clue, right? The Commanders, no clue. This could be Caleb Williams. This could, I mean, what does the Commanders look like if it's Eric Bieniemy and Drake May, or Eric Bieniemy and Caleb Williams? All of a sudden, it's like, tough game, you know. So this is a tough one. This schedule is unforgiving. When you have to play at Lambeau, when you have to play at Arrowhead, at Dallas, certainly not easy.
First, combined win record from the previous year is really sketchy when evaluating strength of schedule.
Yep.
A lot of stuff changes in the NFL.
It's useless.
The reason why this year's schedule was so abnormally easy is the context in which you faced these teams. You faced teams when their starting quarterbacks were hurt. You face teams that you thought were going to be good that ended up being awful. So, like, I don't know that this guarantees that these Saints will have an easy schedule this year. It gives them a good chance of having a manageable schedule, but but it's not going to be easier than this year. I'd find that hard to fathom.
Yeah,
and after
no way.
watching you fail this year, I don't have a ton of faith that it's going to be any different next year.
No, I mean, Falcons are starting over. They're going to have a new head coach. They've got about $35 million in cap room to spend. All right, so what do they look like? Carolina, we know they're starting over. They're going to have a new head coach. They've got $37 million to spend. And so who can they bring in? Because to your point, like, you can change your roster. Like $37 million, you can go out there and you can change your roster. Who do they bring in as head coach is going to be important in both scenarios.
A big part of it this year, too, was we knew that a lot of the teams we were playing were starting basically backup quarterbacks or rookie quarterbacks. So we were assuming they were going to struggle. If you go back and look at that schedule we just looked at, you're talking about, let's just say the quarterbacks we do know. All right, so we'll assume it's Bryce Young, Dak Prescott, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, probably Baker Mayfield, Jalen Hurts, Jordan Love, Matt Stafford, Joe Flacco, Deshaun Watson, one of those two. I mean, just those quarterbacks are pretty strong. You know, way, way, way better than the quarterbacks we faced this year. You know, playing Herbert, Mahomes, Dak, and Hurts all in the same season. You can throw Stafford in there without even factoring in all these teams that we don't know. You know what I mean? Like CJ Stroud was an elite level quarterback this year. What if Michael Penix goes to Atlanta and Michael Penix is the same? What if he has a rookie year like CJ Stroud? You know, I mean, what if Caleb Williams or Drake May or whoever Washington ends up with, whatever they end up doing? You know, I mean, you know, it's hard to tell what those kind of teams do. So, I mean, it's tough quarterback play. A lot of these teams will have. It's also the teams that are vying for good head coaches. Like right now, Dallas, I think, is the favorite to get Bill Belichick. Atlanta is like one of the favorites. Jim Harbaugh right now is the favorite to be the Chargers head coach. So on top of the quarterbacks, let's say the coaches, let's say we're playing against Jim Harbaugh, Bill Belichick, Andy Reid. I mean, you know, Sirianni if he's back, Sean Payton, Matt LaFleur, Sean McVay, Kevin Stefanski. These are really good coaches. Brian Daboll. I mean, you look at that, and on top of the quarterbacks, we're playing the best coaches in the NFL. If Belichick and Harbaugh land at some combination of Atlanta, Dallas, Chargers, then you were probably playing 3 of the top 5 quarterbacks, and I would say 3 of the top 5 head coaches. Maybe even all 5. Well, it can't be all 5 because Kyle Shanahan's not in here. But yeah, so something like 3 of the top 5 quarterbacks, 3 of the top 5 head coaches. Not easy, ladies and gentlemen.
It feels like Atlanta is closer than Carolina is.
Yes,
I mean,
Carolina will be bad.
It's crazy. They have one of the better defenses in the NFL, but their offense was dead last. So I would assume they're going to bring in an offensive-minded head coach. Well, how much better?
How'd that work last year? Frank Reich was an offensive-minded head coach, and Frank Reich is trying to sell me car insurance. He's working for State Farm. So I don't care who you bring in. You could bring in Bill Walsh and have John Madden as your defensive coordinator. As long as Bryce Young is the quarterback, Carolina will be bad.
Better can Bryce Young get? Like, that's going to be important. So, like, the teams in your division are going to be somebody that, because they were so bad and they're starting over, you feel like that portion of the schedule that's going to be weak, that portion will probably stay weak. But to your other point, like, you don't know how good the rest of the NFL is going to be. And, again, $35+ million for these teams. Who can they bring in?
Let me ask you this. Go down in the comments below. So we all know people say the NFC South is bad, and they said it to start their analysis. They said that our schedule's easy because we play the NFC South 6 times. The Carolina will be bad. Do we expect Atlanta to be bad next year? I do not. We just laid it out there. They could have Bill Belichick. They are drafting a quarterback. They're trying to improve. They are actively trying to improve. We are not. Tampa Bay, they won the division. Okay? They won the division in about 4 hours. They'll be playing the Eagles. They could beat the Eagles. They're playing at home. So the idea that, the NFC South's easy. Oh, yeah? Who? Because right now, the only easy team in the South is the Panthers. The Bucs are, you cannot say the division champion is easy. So throw that out. The Bucs are not an easy, those are not 2 easy games. Right? The Falcons, on top of it just being a rivalry game, on top of them being virtually the same as we were this year, they are telling you, we're trying to improve. They're making moves. Something we have decided not to do. So if you're the Falcons, put yourself in their shoes. If you're the Falcons, don't you feel better going into next season playing us? Because right now, you have to assume it's going to be virtually the same roster. How much roster improvement will there be? Like I said, we may be losing people on the roster. I think we're certainly losing Michael Thomas. Okay, so are we going to replace him, or are we going to roll Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, and A.T. Perry? Is that how it's going to be? We could lose Marshawn Lattimore. So are we going to replace him, or just roll out there with Delonte Taylor and Paulson Adebo? Tyrann Mathieu, what's he going to do? Some of our older players, Cam Jordan, Demario Davis. What's the offensive line going to look like? How are we going to improve that? We have a lot of questions, and we're kind of staying put. So I am absolutely not going to say the NFC South is the easy part of our schedule. I mean, y'all heard me go through when we just did the prediction. Split against Tampa, split against Atlanta. And we saw this year, it's easier said than done. This year we had to beat Tampa on the road. And then, the last game against Atlanta, we saw how that worked out. But we got smoked in Atlanta. So, we split with them this year. And I would assume the Bucs and Atlanta are worse this year than they're going to be next year.
Like, you got to play Tyson Bagent this year. You got to play Josh Dobbs this year for the Vikings. Like, you didn't win all these opportunities either. You got a lot of nice breaks, and you were unable to fall through, so I don't have a ton of faith that you will.
The Saints?
Next season.
In the salary cap, they'll find a way to get under because they always do.
Yeah,
but
the cap, not important.
An example, they're minus $72.3 million.
Yeah.
The other teams have $38 million to spend, $34 million, whatever that number was, and you're minus 72. So you'll get under, but what can you really bring in that's not already there?
Bilbo asks, would you rather be in the playoffs and lose the first game or not be in the playoffs at all?
Depends. I mean, if I could choose, I would rather get in. All things equal, I'd rather get in. If I could get in the playoffs and have the 15th overall pick, or lose, or not make the playoffs and have the 13th overall pick, I would make the playoffs for the fan experience and for, especially if you're hosting a game. Going to a playoff game is fun. You never know what can happen. Well, I guess they said we lose, but still, I would rather go. Just because you that flip that last game and you get a slot or two of draft advantage, like, I don't think that matters that much. I'd much rather go to the playoffs. And then if you want to really get deep into it, I would much rather my roster have playoff experience. I'd much rather my quarterbacks and my coaches and my young players experience playoff football, experience that high level, sudden death kind of mentality. I think that's really important for a team trying to go from good to great or great to elite, is to have those like big games, to have those big game experiences, playoff experiences, get used to the travel, get used to the the pomp and the circumstance, all that stuff. So I'd factor that all in, but I no matter what, I think the answer is always make the playoffs.
Depends on your. I mean, like,
I think it depends on the context.
Yeah, like the Cowboys, you want to be.
Like, let's see if they mention the experience, like playing in the games, experience, and all that stuff, or if we're just that far ahead of everyone, in the space.
In the playoffs, because you felt like you had a roster that could go compete and make a run. You're the number 2 seed.
Yeah,
I'd rather have that and the opportunity than to not make it.
I don't think like Rams fans are too upset. It was a season that looked bad for a while. They finish hot.
They were supposed to be one of the bottom 5 teams.
Yeah, and so they almost get it to like, again, we talk about this all the time in sports talk. Been doing this job a long time now. A decade come October of doing daily sports talk radio shows. What determines the temperature of a fan base are not the results themselves. It's where do the results land in relation to the expectation, right? Because 12-5 for one team is not 12-5 for another, or let's say 9-8. 9-8 for one team is not 9-8 for another.
Well, I always say this: if you're just results based as far as like the number, and you're not watching how you win games or how you lose games and all that, then I just think that's such a horrible way of evaluating a team and determining how good a team is. I cannot tell you how many times this season, after I would say that wasn't a great win or that wasn't too bad of a loss or whatever it was, there was always someone saying it's just about the W or just about the L, which to me is funny. I mean, we've done so many videos this year. I think everyone watching has a pretty high football IQ at this point. We're pretty deep into this. But it's just crazy to think like how Miami's record and then like Buffalo's record, totally different ends of the season, like totally different seasons, even though the record isn't that far off, right? Like Miami didn't beat teams that had over 500. Miami was struggling towards the end. Miami was hurt. Miami scored like 21 points total in their last 3 games. Miami was obviously not clicking. You could just tell the performance was alarming. If you just went based off of loss or win and totally threw all that other stuff out, then how can you possibly evaluate a team? Same with Philadelphia. Like Philadelphia's record combined with Philadelphia's current play. Like if you look at Philly, you look at the Browns, you look at the Rams, you look at their records and their how they're playing at that moment. You can tell one team is clicking, one team has a lot of momentum, one team is firing, one team is doing this, whereas the other team is not. It just blows my mind that we're this far into, it's 2024 and people are still basing everything off of wins and losses.
Team can want to fire everyone and one team can be ecstatic. I mean, look at the Eagles. The Eagles went 11-5 and Nick Sirianni may get fired if they lose in the playoffs.
Yeah, he's brought them to the playoffs 3 straight years now.
And gone to a
Super Bowl last year.
And he might get fired if they lose in the playoffs. But that's because relative to their expectation and the expectation they built through a lot of this season, starting 10-1, the collapse has been disastrous. And it's kind of funny because like everybody's like, oh, well, it was all the coordinators. That's why they were so good. And I understand. I don't say that's wrong.
I mean, look at Houston. Houston's a great example too. Houston is celebrating, 10 wins? 10 wins, division championship. But if Kansas City would have had 10 wins and won the division, there have been a lot of people saying, what the hell's wrong with Kansas City? That's why it's way bigger than just wins and losses. It's way beyond that. You got to look at expectation. You got to look at the Vegas regular season wins, how far they're over that. Houston was like 3.5. So they're over their expectations by like 6-7 games, right? The Chiefs, teams like that, they're like 12 and 13.5. So if they win 10 games, they're well under expectations. The Saints were 9.5. Saints won 9 games. They're under expectations. The 9 wins for the Saints, very different than if Carolina would have won 9 games. Carolina would have been way over expectations. So it's like the Bucs. The Bucs are over expectations. The Bucs had a good year, successful year. Everyone's very happy. The Eagles, like they said, Sirianni could get fired. If they lose against Tampa in a couple hours, I wouldn't be surprised at all if Sirianni was fired.
But they did go 10-1 without those coordinators. And then something happened where everything just went disastrous. So I don't think.
Different video for a different day, but Jalen Hurts got hurt. Jalen Hurts started playing bad. That's what happened. Jalen Hurts started playing really bad. He was banged up, and they started losing games.
I don't think you can answer that playoff question in such a binary way, right? I think it kind of matters.
I think you can.
On where you're coming from. Like for the Browns a couple years ago, they were probably pretty disappointed this year, but It was just making the playoffs that was like their huge deal, their championship, if you will.
If the question is, and this is really taking us on a different route here, but if the question is you can either make the playoffs and lose in the first round or just miss the playoffs, you're always going to make the playoffs. It is binary. The only reason you wouldn't want to make the playoffs is if the question is, would you rather make the playoffs and lose in the first round, or would you rather have the first overall pick? Because then you could possibly say I would rather have the first overall pick. But you don't want to be, I would say even if it's make the playoffs and lose in the first round or win 5 games and miss the playoffs, win 6 games, miss the playoffs. Like, why would you want to do that? You either want to be good, i.e. make the playoffs, or you want to be one of the 3 worst teams in the NFL. So the way this question is phrased, I think it is binary. I think you always pick the playoffs.
If they fire that man after going to the postseason,
Sirianni?
yeah, 3 straight times,
Welcome
getting
to
to
Philly.
the Super Bowl,
Welcome to
just
Philly.
because they've had a rough stretch here at the finale of the regular season.
So I heard a rumor, actually. I heard a rumor that Sirianni lost the locker room. I heard there is some serious beef in the locker room with the players like A.J. Brown and Sirianni. And I've heard that they may fire him because of that, not because of the results, not because of the record or stumbling towards the end of the year or anything like that. And it's funny because when I heard that, I was thinking, man, it's exactly what I've been saying with Dennis Allen, where if you lose the locker room, I don't care what coach you are. I don't care if you were Andy Reid. I don't care if you were, Urban Meyer in college or Nick Saban or Bill Belichick or whoever. Once the players lose the respect for you, lose authority, you lose your authority status. Once they quit listening to you, once they quit respecting your decisions and all that, I don't care who it is, you kind of have to go. The coach kind of has to leave because it's either the coach has to go or the players who are dissenting has to go. And that goes for the NBA too. We've seen it with LeBron James coach teams where good coaches, successful coaches that went to finals and whatever else, they're gone because they've lost the locker room. They've lost the players. So I think Philadelphia, if that is what ends up happening, that's just a rumor. That's just being spoken in the circles. But if that is what's going on, I think Philly would be smart to move on versus just say, well, you took us to a Super Bowl, might as well just stick it out. If the players don't like him, don't respect him, why wait? Move on. So that's especially right now with so many good coaches. So many great coaches out there. Throw another one in. It's the same in any sport. And that's why I'm so surprised that the Dennis Allen locker room situation is not being talked about more. As far as how can you bring him back when he's lost the locker room? Because he obviously has. So if Nick Sirianni can be on the hot seat for losing the locker room, how in the world is Dennis Allen not on the hot seat for losing the Saints locker room?
It's crazy. I know. The talk shocks me too, but it's so funny to see how different franchises are managed. And here you have one that you think in the Saints that thinks they're the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's so crazy to watch Mike Vrabel get fired and you're not just running back with Dennis Allen, but you're really doubling down.
Yeah. Oh, you're
to the point where you're going to have to make
in.
multiple major player changes over the offseason, likely to try to get the culture correct.
Like you said, everything's a little bit different. Every job. I mean, like Mike McCarthy, I think he's probably going to get fired.
He will
because of what
he will get fired. But and don't you think he should? I mean that's a great example. Why would you keep him if you're Jerry Jones? You have the opportunity to go get Bill Belichick. You have the opportunity to go get Jim Harbaugh. Jerry Jones is 81 years old. He wants to win a Super Bowl. Here's the facts, ladies and gentlemen. Since the Houston Texans were created in 2002, the Texans have won more playoff games in that span than the Dallas Cowboys. You think Jerry Jones is happy about that? No. He wants to win a Super Bowl. Mike McCarthy can't do it. Mike McCarthy isn't the guy to do it. Mike McCarthy is a safe, stable head coach. Look what just happened. Really good Dallas team. They got ran out ran out against Green Bay at home. Again, Jerry has to stomach a good regular season, collapse in the playoffs. This time, right in front of his face. And a lot of people are going to say, well, it wasn't Mike McCarthy's fault. Oh, yeah? Dak Prescott had 0 passing yards in the first quarter. First time in his career. CeeDee Lamb had more carries than catches in the first quarter. I don't care what happened during the game. That is game planning. That is coaching. That is scheme. I retweeted a tweet from Warren Sharp about Mike McCarthy on first and second down. He was running the ball on first and second down nonstop. And the tweet goes through the yards per carry versus when he tried to throw and all that stuff. And it was just a shining example that McCarthy tightened up. McCarthy tightened everything up. McCarthy did not lean into what was working during the regular season. He tightened up the play calling. He was running basically Bear Bryant's offense. And next thing you know, it was 27-0. And then I don't care what happened the rest of the game. So if I'm Jerry, yeah, I'm firing him. Why wouldn't I? Why not?
Not been able to do in the postseason.
Deserved or undeserved?
Deserved.
I would personally like to have him back, but I can see both sides of it.
This feels like you want him fired, but for some reason you want to be on the record as a sane. You want to appear more sane and logical, and so you're saying you'd personally want him back.
I want Mike McCarthy back. I thought that Dak made a 180 under him. Look, the only thing I give him credit for as far as bad last night was his team didn't look prepared to play coming in. The play calling itself is fine. Dak just didn't make a lot of the throws. So as far
this is a good example of what I'm talking about. Where we're looking, second down play calling, first down play calling. And this cat right here behind the glass is saying, no, play calling was fine. Play calling was absolutely horrific. Play calling was the reason Dallas lost. I mean, I'll go ahead and put the Warren Sharp tweet up now just to show what I'm talking about. I mean, Big Mike was an absolute masterclass in just how to play call your team out of a game. And the fact that it was prime time, the fact that it was a playoff game, and the fact that I'm guessing this fella's a Cowboys fan, he's sitting here and he's telling us that McCarthy called a good game. There's levels to this, ladies and gentlemen. There's levels to this analysis game. Not everybody can do it. We'll end the video there. This is not a Dallas Cowboys video, but let me know in the comments below what you think about the schedule next year. What's your prediction? I'll say 6 wins. I'll say 7. I said 7. 7 wins. First look at the schedule. Obviously, we'll keep going until first game. We'll keep predicting as certain teams make moves and changes and whatnot. So let me know in the comments below what you think. Give me your prediction for next year. Current first look at the schedule. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next video.